Hey everyone, Aubrey the Weird One here. It's so nice to officially meet you here in person. Today's video is going to be all about learning the LOTRO classes and which ones are easiest to learn and which ones are the most difficult to learn. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure to check out the videos down below as I have playlists that go over some tips and tricks and more content for Lord of the Rings Online. And especially if you're a new player, well, this is perfect. I have a playlist down for you that's a step-by-step guide of how to get started in LOTRO. All right, so now let's flip over to the tier list, and then I will personally give you my recommendations on which classes are the easiest to learn, especially when you're first playing, and which are the most difficult. Okay, so as you can see here, we have all of the classes, and I'm just going to quickly go over which class is which, just so you're not confused. But this is Beorning class. This icon is Brawler. Then we have Burglar, Captain, Champion, Guardian, Hunter, Lore Master, Minstrel, Rune-Keeper, and last but not least, Warden. So I'm going to start off with the one that's just easiest for me personally, and also the one that I recommend to everyone who's new to LOTRO, and that'll be Hunter. I'm going to give them S tier. Hunter is the easiest class ever, and they essentially can do a lot of long-ranged abilities, so that's what makes them very good, is that they're like the best class when it comes to ranged skills. And then they also have great like close combat skills, so a lot of melee, and overall they just have a lot of ports. So if you have say on a regular character, we'll just say Minstrel for example, they don't have a lot of extra milestones. You only get your housing milestone and your like own personal marker milestone, and essentially milestones are just places where you can port to in different areas of Middle Earth. So most characters, you might even have a third if you're in a kinship, but you can only port to like your house, your kinship house, and like the one milestone that you get. So you have to you have to use it very good. You have to commit to the place you're gonna place it. And hunters, they have like an unlimited array of places that they can port. Like you'll get Breland and like Mikkel Delving, Eredluin, you'll get all of those. I think it's essentially like once you hit like level 20, or kind of like when you're past going through those questing areas, then you'll start getting all of those ports, so that way you can easily come back, work on some deeds, and do some other things. So that alone makes them a very convenient class, and they're just relatively easy to pick up. They don't really have like a lot of things when it comes down to like having to use certain skills with pairs and essentially doing combos. They don't have too many of those, which makes them just so easy to learn. So Hunter for sure, easiest class. I'm always going to recommend it. I know a lot of people who just commit to Hunter still, who've played the game for years, and they're like, Hunter's great, I don't need to know any others. So to each their own. The next class I want to mention is Beorning, because I actually recently just played Beorning in one of my latest videos where I give you a rundown guide and my personal review of the first 20 levels in Beorning. And quite frankly, these skills are so easy to learn, and it is an overpowered class. I think they kind of need to tame it down a bit. It's just a little too good. Just a little too good. So I honestly, I'm just gonna put them in the A tier simply because there is a difference, and you only can use certain skills when you're in man form or bear form. And that's the thing with Beornings, that they can morph into bears like mid-battle, which is kind of cool. And then they have a different bar. So like most characters are going to have power bars underneath your health and morale, but Beornings actually have this thing called Wrath. So that essentially is like once you build up Wrath by hitting skills in your man form, then you can use your Wrath, change into a bear, and do some really good damage in bear form. So that's the only reason why I'm going to give it A tier instead of S tier, because it is sometimes difficult when you're trying to place your skills together and figure out which ones you can use when you're only in bear form versus the ones that you can use when you're only in man form. So that can be a little difficult. I know when the game first came out with this class that I did find that a little confusing, but honestly, it's really not that difficult. Like, it's really not. I'm just really overthinking this, and I just want to make sure I'm being fair with where I'm placing this. Okay, the next class I'm also going to mention that's very easy to learn is actually Guardian, and I'm going to move this in the S tier, because they're essentially like your go-to tanks. They're like the only tanks in the LOTRO that are meant to do a lot of defense. They're very good for group content and all of that too, but honestly, it does not take that much to learn their skills. It's pretty basic. They have a couple AoE skills though, so you just kind of have to keep an eye out on those, and then you can kind of see like what other skills they have, because they have like taunting skills and such. So essentially you can aggro enemies and make sure that they're on you instead of hitting your other group members, which is the point of a tank. But I mean, those skills are pretty obvious on when you get them and what they look like, so it's a really easy class to pick up. I never had any issues with really any of the skills or learning it. So okay, and then kind of just looking at this now, I'm trying to think about all these classes, and I'm like, some of them, this is kind of where we're going to dwindle off into some of the negative aspects of it, but I'm just gonna go straight up. I'm going to insult a couple of people by doing this, but Warden is F tier 100%. It is the hardest class you are going to ever learn in LOTRO when it comes down to when you're first learning it, because there's a whole system attached to it that's just so difficult and requires a lot of memorization. Now, once you get that down, it's a decent class, honestly. I honestly don't really like it though, but that's another topic for another video. But they have this system called the Gambit system, and essentially you have to do like combos and use like these 3 base skills, and then once you set them up in a certain way, then you're gonna have like really good potential heals or like really great DPS. The system itself is very, very, very not user-friendly, because in order to learn those 3 like basic skills, like you're gonna get these 3 basic skills, and I'm not sure like what essentially they're called at the moment, but you will use those 3 basic skills to then use these combinations and all of that. And there are several combinations. There's so many different like orders that you can do these skills to do different things, and there's just so many. Like, I mean, like at least like 40 different combinations. So you essentially have to memorize all of those combinations, which is just ridiculous in my opinion. Who's going to take the time and the effort to memorize like all of these certain combinations? The payoff is just not worth it to me. So that's sort of why I'm gonna put Warden F tier, because it is not that user-friendly. It really isn't, and it's going to take you a good amount of time, a couple of deaths maybe. And honestly, once you get to the part like where it's like, oh yeah, now I know what skills I'm looking for and all of that, it's just not worth it. Just play a different class. Sort of sticking to that more difficult class area, I'm actually gonna put Lore Master in the E tier. Because they are a difficult class to learn. I've actually just started replaying my Lore Master, and there's a lot of skills. Like, they have really good skills, don't lie. And like, someone like me who doesn't really know what they're doing when they're playing them as of lately, it's not like you're going to die necessarily if you just kind of hit skills, you hope for the best. Like, you'll do decent damage, but you are pretty squishy in the beginning, so you have to kind of be worried of that. They're sort of a class where you have to use certain skills in certain orders in order to get really good payoff, which you never would really think about it. Like, looking at the class, like when it said advanced, when I first saw it, I was like, why? Like, this class doesn't look advanced, but it is. It comes down to getting the best of both worlds, essentially, when it comes down to like getting your skills, combinations, and all of that too. And they have a lot of different skills for a lot of different things. Like, it's really cool because you can use a Lore Master to essentially do you could find weaknesses with some of your foes and such, and you can actually like find out more with like the frost and wind, fire, and like lightning elements too. You can kind of use all of those elements to your advantage. So it's a lot of different variables that come down to helping you with learning the skills a little easier, which is kind of why I put them on E tier. And then on top of all of that, you have a companion. So you're already trying to learn all your skills, and then you have a companion on top of it, which doesn't really help. So kind of looking at this list, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't played the Brawler in a minute, and I don't find them a difficult class to learn, honestly. I felt like they were pretty easy from what I remember, and I think that they're moderate, like in terms of their damage and stuff. I think that the class could use a little bit of work, but I'm sure that's something that the devs are going to work on, or you know, whoever who works on the game will get to when they get to it. But just for this, I'm just going to put it on B, maybe even C. And I'm also going to mention, I'm going to put the champion on the B tier list as well. And I honestly would put this in A to S, but this is the thing. I remember when I started a champion, the biggest issue I always had was that the champion is very well known for having really good AoE skills, so area of effect. So essentially that's the thing with champion, that's going to be hard to learn with them at first, and I've died a couple of times to this, trust me. But every character, you have like your bubble, and like in this bubble, this radius, you can start, like, you will aggro enemies and such, and if you're too close, like say you're fighting one mob and there's like another mob like right next to it, if you're too close, then like one of your skills, one of your AoE skills will probably trigger it and hit the other mob who's just like, you know, chilling, and then they'll start attacking you. So so with the champion, I almost think of their radius as almost like 2 times the normal like radius or bubble that you would think for other characters, because their primary thing is a lot of AoE skills, so they have a great like range of mobs that you could potentially hit if you're way too close. So that's the learning process with champions. That's going to be a little difficult to learn, and it takes some time because I've been in some predicaments. So okay, so now we're getting to the point where I'm getting conflicted. So I actually play a Rune-Keeper on my stream. If you check me out on Twitch, I do stream a Rune-Keeper primarily right now, and I like the Rune-Keeper. They do have a system that's a little like unique. It's nothing like Wardens. Like Wardens have like a totally different gambit system, and Rune-Keepers have this system called an attunement. So essentially you have skills, you'll have like fire damage skills and like heals and such, so you can do a lot of great like self heals or group heals and all of that. If you do use like your fire damage skills and do back to back to back to back on those skills, then your attunement bar will go up in that area, and essentially you'll have bigger skills that you can use to do like more fire or DPS essentially. And then the other side of that attunement bar is going to be like heals. So if you do like back-to-back heals, then you're going to get other skills to unlock that are going to be like really big heal buffs and all of that. It's kind of cool that they have essentially like this scale, is how I think of it, like a balance. And if you do utilize a lot of the skills to like do major damage and all of that, then the balance is going to go like down for heals, so your heals will do less and your damage skills will be a lot higher. That system's a little difficult to navigate in some degrees, but I don't really even think it is, honestly, but some people say it could be a little bit, so I might put them at like B tier for that, maybe even C, because I don't feel like it's a difficult class to learn. They do have like a lot more other skills, like they have runes and stuff too that come to play in that, because you can place rune downs and those kind of give you buffs and such, or heals and all of that. So I'll probably just put it at B. I'm a little conflicted on that. I'm gonna put it at B right now. It's honestly not a hard class to learn, but I'm just comparing it to these other ones that are in S tier and all that, and I'm just like, okay, like it might take a little more learning to get there, but it's relatively easy. Okay, and now the final 3. I'm so torn. So I love the Burglar, okay? Burglar, they have a whole element of stealth. They're like the stealthy people in the game, but they actually have a lot of buffs and debuffs. So their skills are difficult to learn, we'll say, because there are like skill chains and such that can help you in group content and all of that with Burglars. So that's really important to have. And Burglars are great. I don't know why people are saying like they need to be buffed up more or anything like that. I love my Burglar. Like the damage is incredible, I feel still. So it is a class that might take a couple of minutes to kind of go through, learn the skills, and just overall just keep a general grouping of which skills can be used when and all of that. So I'm gonna put them in the C tier. The stealth element alone in it is a lot. and that can be a little difficult because you have to kind of learn like what kind of enemies are going to detect you faster than others, and if you're stepping in front of them, like they will probably detect you and start attacking you. So learning that's already, you know, a challenge in itself. And then on top of that, you have all of these skills that are like debuffing certain enemies, and you're like, well, how does that help me, you know? And kind of learning the whole system, it can take some time. All right, now I'm gonna put Captain at D tier, and this is a tough one. The reason why I do this is because they are a great like offhand tank DPS class. They're great for group content. They're like the leaders of your fellowship is kind of how I think about them, because they have a lot of skills that can help with, you know, just damage, attacking like a really big mob, and they have like group heals and such like that that can help you in times of need. There's a lot of like buffs that you can use, and those are all great. But because of that, I am going to put it at D tier because there are a lot of different skills. They're almost like one of the most well-rounded characters in my opinion. Like I feel like Wardens are a pretty well-rounded character where they can essentially do almost anything. They can be any role anytime. And I think that captains are the same way. But overall, learning the captain skills, because they're so well-rounded, could take a minute to learn. And then last but not least, we have Minstrel, and I honestly don't feel too comfortable ranking it. I will rank it though, but it's been a long time since I've played a Minstrel, a new Minstrel, I should say, a new character as a Minstrel. It's been several years. I have a Minstrel now who's my main, and oh my god, Minstrels kick butt. They kick butt. I absolutely love them. I feel like Minstrels do have like a learning curve to them because they are primarily for heals, and essentially like when you're going out in battle, there are some things that you need to know. Like Minstrels have stances, so you can use, I think there's about 3 stances, or at least there was last time I played it, but there are 3 stances where you can essentially be like a major healer. So you go into like your healing stance, which is great for group content. So you go in your healing stance, you have a plethora of skills you can use for heals. And then you could also do like your light damage or stance or a damage stance. And that essentially is mostly when you're soloing and you have a huge range of abilities that are really overpowered in my opinion to then do damage on mobs and all of that when you're soloing. And then you kind of have like your middle of the line stance where you can essentially do a little bit of heals and a little bit of damage at the same time. And learning those stances can be difficult. You have to learn the stances, and then you have to learn how your healing abilities can help you or your group, and I feel like that's a lot to learn in itself. And then also when you're learning like your damage stance, that can also take a minute too, because you're essentially learning like 2 different parts of your class and you kind of have to learn them separately. I think for that I'm going to put it in C tier. I could even put it in D tier just because of that, but honestly, I never really had too much of a problem with it. I did die a couple times when I first learned how to play Minstrel just because I didn't realize about the stances, so I hope that that helps. But that's something to kind of keep in mind with them. So that's my tier list on the classes that I find pretty relatively easy to learn versus the ones that are most difficult. So S tier is Hunter Guardian, A tier is Beorning, B tier is Brawler, Champion, and Rune-Keeper, C tier is Burglar and Minstrel, D is Captain, E is Lore Master, and F is Warden. And I'm gonna have a whole video coming out soon about which classes I find to be the most boring. And let's just say it's gonna be an interesting video. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, stay weird, weirdos.